Hi and welcome to this video about the pan lozenge, the standard livery that pan books used in the UK for the majority of their SF from, let's see, when was it? From October 1975 until sort of late 82. And what you're seeing here is a selection of PDFs created by Vince Milner, who is the executive co-producer on this. Thanks, Vince, for doing the research. Rather fed up as everybody has been with my recalcitrance in terms of putting together a pan lozenge complete list, which I did do once a long time ago. Vince decided to take matters into his own hand, create these PDFs, use ISFDB as a resource, and then send this back to me. And we checked it over, added some things, and we think we've got a complete list. So if there's anything that you don't recognize, please let me know. This was the very first pan lozenge back in October 1975. We think there were two issued simultaneously, and this is Frankenstein Unbound. This is my original copy, and it's in a little bit of a state, and you notice the lozenge, it's a rectangle with beveled edges, hence my use of the term lozenge, because it's not a rectangle and oblong, the beveled edges making it to something else, and it just reminded me of a sort of cough sweet, or any sort of sweet. Sweets tend to have beveled edges, of course. And this is one I wanted to upgrade. And you'll notice that it just says Aldiss in the same way that Panther, Granada, Grafton used to have Asimov. And what I think they were trying to do here was brand Aldiss as the British equivalent. And this is my old one, as I say, so in a bit of a state. Look at that. I bought that secondhand very long time ago. And it's seen a lot of love. But I did want to upgrade, so recently I managed to upgrade that. We'll show you the upgrade in a moment, and here it is. I got a spiffing one from Mike at Fine Edition Books in Greenhithe, maybe. Thanks, Mike. This is absolutely beautiful. This cover design was also used on an American hardcover edition, and I would like one of those. They're hard to find, but as you can see, this is absolutely gorgeous. This book means a heck of a lot to me. There's a comparison of the original and the upgrade, and you can see why I'm upgrading. It's not easy to find these things, so that's what I've gone for, and I think I'm going to keep that one bagged and retain the other as my reading copy, though I do have a Cape one. This is an example of a pan lozenge before the lozenge. This is Asimov's Nine Tomorrows, an early 70s edition, and we'll come back to that later on. You'll see it on the screen now. So we're going through them kind of alphabetical. You'll notice that the Asimov has a double lozenge, as does the Arthur C. Clarke for Earthlight. So there wasn't consistency across the design, and we're not sure who did the design. I asked Tim Kitchen, who's probably the preeminent pan collector in the UK. Well, without any doubt, there's a video on Jules Birch's channel about his collection, which is just stunning. He's got artwork and everything. Do watch it. It's beautiful. I'll try and put a link in somewhere. And yeah, these are really important ones for me. Poul Anderson I got quite recently. The best Dark Side of the Earth my father bought me way back, and that's my first bester, and it's probably my favourite SF short story collection of all time. Starburst, I'd like a mint one, it's hard to find. The little one there, Orson Scott Card, that's a later one, and Arthur C. Clarke there. You'll notice the Clarke didn't get the just straightforward Clarke in the way that Aldiss did. But interestingly, as we move on, you see that some of the Clarkes have a gold lozenge or double gold lozenge. The only exception, I think, as we go through this, is the Richard Cowper one, the Custodians, which you can see on the screen now. And these to me are absolutely beautiful books, absolutely gorgeous. And I think the design aesthetic to me screamed modernity. And they really spoke to me from the bookshop shelves at the time when they were around. And it was when I was starting to buy and read my own SF. And they just look like the paragon of what was going on. Absolutely superb. And of course, there were classic books like Fall of Moondust, fairly minor book really, but obviously had some status. Brand new books like Imperial Earth, and things like Brontemec, which had just won the BSFA award in 75, 76, I think it was. So you see here one really famous writer and one less famous writer, and Clone there down at the bottom on the right was one of the very last pan lozenges, as was Profundus at the top left here. And there's more Cowper and the Philip K. Dick Galactic Pot Healer. I have very vivid memories of walking onto the campus of what was then the Polytechnic in Treforest, Pontypridd, South Wales. It's now part of the University of Wales. Going in the tiny Blackwell's bookshop there and buying a copy of that new. And they had a little bookcase, probably about 5 shots of SF. And yeah, absolutely beautiful. One I would like to upgrade is the one from Maze of Death. I have that, bought it second hand. It's got sort of Sharpie written ATP on the cover. One I don't have is the PKD for the Preserving Machine, which is a really uncommon one. The Preserving Machine is one of those books that's uncommon in almost every edition it's had, and it's been issued many times, and there was a previous Pan edition before the Lozenge. That's really hard to find, and really hard to find a good nick. And it's really basically sort of the kind of best of Philip K. Dick in a way. We move on here to Harlan Ellison. You see a double lozenge for The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World. And that, again, is one of my favourite books, which, you know, really had a massive impact on me. Next to that, on the other side, is Deathbed Stories, another brilliant one. The Heinlein, During the Summer, that's a very, very uncommon one to watch out for. And Green Hills of Earth, down in the bottom left. That was a cover. I think that's probably my favourite Pan lozenge cover. And at the time as a kid, I just found the title, the typeface, and the image, and the lozenge itself was just absolutely iconic. I really still haven't got over it yet. One to watch out for too is the Douglas Hill anthology, Shape of Sex to Come. I used to have one of those and foolishly got rid of it. It's now super uncommon, so do watch out for that. Waldo and Magic Ink was one that we missed out on our initial listing, Vince and I, but we managed to get that in there after somebody pointed that out. Then we have some Holdstock and Vonda McIntyre. And the Vonda McIntyre had a number of different cover liveries. You'll notice that's got a gold hype dot down in the corner, and there's a version without that as well. That won some awards. And an interesting one to watch out for that you don't see very much is Richard McKenna's Casey Agonistes, which is fantastic. And I have that in a Gollings hardcover and that one. One that's really hard to find a good nick these days is the one of Day Million by Frederick Pohl, which I have owned, but I don't have at the moment, and I'm trying to get a pristine one. And boy, that's proving to be quite a job, it has to be said. But I think you'll agree, these are beautiful covers. And as I say, Pan really ran these from mid-76. There were exceptions until 82 when they did the last reprints. So for me, they come in at a time in my life when I'm an adolescent and I'm very interested in books in a wider sense, into music and punk rock and stuff like that. And then we move on to two of my favourites, Christopher Priest and Bob Shaw. Dream of Wessex was probably the first Pan lozenge I bought new, and it was entirely the cover, and that's how I got into Priest, and I absolutely loved it, and I've got all of those. And recently I've upgraded my copy of Infinite Summer, and the shores, they're very beautiful as well. I don't have Anticipations at the moment, but that's because I've got a Mint Faber hardcover, which I bought at the Worldcon 87, and it's signed by Chris, and I think it's signed by some of the others as well. I think I've got it signed by Aldiss, maybe Harrison. I think it's Aldiss and Harrison. I'll have to dig that out and have a look at it. But I've got that signed by several contributors. Sadly, I never met Tom Dish, of course, or Robert Sheckley. Ian Watson I've had encounters with, but I don't think we've ever actually met. Great guy, Ian. Very spiky writer. And yeah, those are some of the most beautiful ones on that page. And here's my original second-hand copy of Infinite Summer, which, as you can see, is in a bit of a state. And I bought this second-hand, and I've recently upgraded that, and I'll show you that in a moment. Now, this book, of course, is out of print. The stories in it, some of them come up in the Dream Archipelago. Somebody's written inside, look at that, what a state it's in. And some of them come up in episodes, the more recent collection, but Infinite Summer is actually out of print, and it's unlikely it'll get reprinted. It's signed by Chris. He signed that for me way back in the 80s. When I bought it, that was my first copy. I've got a hardcover first. Very, very beautiful, and it's got really the first Dream Archipelago stories are in there. The Negation, The Watched, and this is an upgrade I got from Mike at Fine Edition, and beautiful. It's got a little bit of a scratch there on the lozenge. You notice that's a double lozenge again. So the design wasn't always consistent, and it would be nice to find out who designed them and how that happened. Comparison of spines showing the absolute beautiful quality of the one which Mike got at the time and hung on to all those years until I purchased from him. So that's why I like Mike at Fine Edition on ABE, because his stuff is not always cheap, but boy, it's always beautiful. It really is. So yeah, I'm going to keep that one bagged. Retain my other one maybe as a reading copy, though I do have a first. We'll see. Maybe I'll sell it on. Bob Shaw and Robert Sheckley. Well, it doesn't come much better than this. And Other Days, Other Eyes, another one of my favourite SF jackets of all time. Again, a lozenge which I bought new. Was that my first show? I believe it was. Others I bought at the time were Who Goes Here, a very, very funny book, much funnier than Harry Harrison's Similar Things, even though it's undoubtedly inspired by them to a degree, and Aretha Stars, a book which I found very elegiac. And next to that is Options by Robert Sheckley, which I think really, Options is a funny book because there's an android in it, a paranoid android, keeps getting things wrong. And I wonder who had that idea. I'm one of these people who firmly believes that Adams must have read Sheckley and ripped him off, and it's kind of shocking. But of course, interestingly, Adams too was published by Pan. And you'll see the people trap there down in the bottom corner. That in a moment will flip and show you another version. This is a recent upgrade, Who Goes Here. I still have my original. I got this from my Fine Edition as well. And I just love this book. It's my favourite funny SF books. I'm not really much of a fan of humorous SF, and I don't really like what Adams and Pratchett did to the fantastic genres. I really think they brought them down and made them very nerdy. And look at that, look how perfect that is. No spine fading there at all. The pink really pops. Absolutely gorgeous. And if you've not read this, it's really good. There is a sequel called War and Peace, which is anemic by comparison. It came much later. But this book really takes me back. I read and reread this in my bedroom at home as a teenager. Great fun book. Lots of verve, slapdash adventure, like Sheckley, but more organized. So if you want a good, witty, funny, light read, you cannot go wrong with Who Goes Here. It's to me the very pinnacle of that kind of SF. Here's the 72 edition of The People Trap, showing you what it looked like before it was in a lozenge. And as you notice, no lozenge, different typeface, and here it is in the livery that we know and love. And I upgraded to one of these recently. I just feel it looks a lot more modern, and I don't mean contemporary, I mean modern. Modern is something that ended in the 1980s. Since then, we've had the postmodern, the endlessly contemporary. And I know I keep saying this, but there will be a video about this. I talk about it in hauntology and psychogeography videos, but I'm going to pull this more into focus quite soon in a video just about modernity and SF. So we're coming towards the end now, and we have Capricorn Games here, Downward to the Earth, The Second Trip, some Simac and Stableford. I mean, really iconic jackets, these all. Fantastic stuff, and really, really beautiful. These are hard to find now, of course, really hard to get in good nick. The Staplefords are probably the most common ones. The Simac one is much sought after because it's an Ian Miller cover. The other Simac has that amazing title, Why Call Them Back from Heaven. Fantastic title. And the Staplefords, to me, they are the more conventional Fosse-esque type covers, but they are amongst my favourite space operas of all time. They're short, they're sharp, they don't mess around. They get in. Granger, the star pilot, he's very sort of abrasive character. Absolutely love them. They're great. And there's real poetry in the description of how the starships are powered. And there's the other three at the top of this page. 4 of them were done as hardcovers by J.M. Dent, but the last couple, Fenris Device and Swan Song, were paperback originals from Pan. Sturgeon, Case and the Dreamer. Sturgeon, I'm having a Sturgeon thing at the moment, so there will be a video soon. Of course, knowing me, it may pop up before this. And the James Tiptree Jr. Up the Walls of the World is one of the last ones. The Van Vogt is very uncommon, but to me, the most interesting book on this page is the one by Steve Wilson, The Lost Traveller, which is a biker apocalypse, and it's got that real pink livery. It pops. I've had it for years. And Steve Wilson was basically a biker writer. He wrote about motorbikes, and he wrote all sorts of books about them. So that's a look across the Pan lozenge. Hope you've enjoyed that. If you come across more we haven't covered, let me know. And at some point, we look at the exceptions to the rule. And I'd very much like to know what you think of these. This is my favourite book covers of all. Now, here's a book which you'll all recognise, and the classic iconic livery, The first edition, of course, was the pan paperback. I used to have one of these out of first printing. And you'll notice here on this flyer that there is a lozenge cover. Now, we don't know whether this was ever actually issued. Tim Kitchen says he's seen a picture of one, and you'll see some colour artwork coming up now, but we're not sure if it was ever issued. We don't think it was, but perhaps a few copies were run off promotionally. So if anybody knows anything about this, please get in touch with us. And that's how the book would have looked with Don't Panic in that white flash. But I personally preferred this, even though it wasn't a lozenge. So that's a look at Pan and what they did then. Thanks for watching. And if you've got anything to add, we'd love to hear from you. And thanks to Vince as well for collaborating with me on this video. Bye for now.